program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Your name and your address, please. Please turn off all cell phones or turn them to silent so they don't disturb the meeting. And the way that this works is the city will make their presentation first of the issue that's before us. After that, the applicant can make comments that they'd like to add, and then it is opened up to a public hearing. The first item on our agenda, final action, preliminary plat, 19th Street Edition.
Good evening. This is 19th Street Edition. It is off of 19th Street here, north of Cameron Street. The preliminary plat is a 5-lot preliminary plat. It creates 5 single-family lots. Lot 5 does have existing single-family that is staying. The cul-de-sac bulb is off the 19th Street Edition. All lots do meet R1 district standards, which is single-family.
Ryan, can you make the map a little bigger?
Oh, sorry. There we go.
Thank you.
Utility easements have been sent to Xcel Energy, AT&T, and Charter TV, and they must be shown on the final plat. Attached in your report is the engineering report. Staff would recommend approval of the preliminary plat for 19th Street Edition with two conditions. On the final plat, they need to indicate all the utility easements and compliance with the recommendations in the engineering report. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ryan? I don't see any at this point. Is the applicant here? Is the applicant here? Would they like to come forward? I don't see the applicant. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move approval with staff recommendations.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Second item on the agenda. That might be a record. 2 minutes? For approval. Site plan, Azura 220-unit assisted living memory care facilities and a CSM for 3 lots.
This project got the rezoning and the general development plan approved last year. It's on Bullis Farm Road, which is located about here. With this project too, you are approving the certified survey map, which creates 3 lots. Common access drive here, lot 1 with building on it, lot 2 with building on it, and future phase for additional building. Here is the site plan showing the 2 20-unit buildings with the shared parking again. Here's the elevation showing the 1-story buildings. And then also the landscape plan. Again, this facility is 2 20-unit assisted living memory care facilities with approval of a site, CSM for the project off of Bullis Farm Road. Attached in your packet is the site plan, building elevations, CSM, and narrative for the project. The site plan does create 2 20-unit facilities, which is consistent with the general development plan approved by council last year with the rezoning. The CSM does create 3 lots. City code does require all those lots having frontage and access to a public street. Lot 2 of this proposed CSM does not have frontage, and thus the Plan Commission must approve the certified survey map. The development does propose 1 single access drive to Bullis Farm Road. With the certified survey map, it does have a 66-foot wide access, parking, and utility easement. Lot 3, with this lot right here, will have to be a final site plan approved by the Plan Commission at a later date. The site plan shows 32 stall parking lot in front of the buildings Typically, the residents at this facility do not drive. The required parking for this facility is based on the number of employees and visitors' needs. With the narrative, the applicant states there will be 17 total employees servicing both buildings, and thus leaving 15 stalls for customers, visitors, or deliveries. The landscape plan here showing does note foundation plantings, street trees, which will need to be approved by the city forester. Each of the buildings do have a patio enclosed for the residents. The sidewalks are provided on the site, but need to be linked to Bullis Farm Road. That is one of the conditions. A 4-stall U-shaped bicycle rack is shown and noted to be meeting city's requirements. Exterior lighting and dumpster enclosure are also noted on the site plan. In your packet is the engineering report. If the Plan Commission does find this site plan consistent with the general development plan, should approve it with some conditions. Providing a pedestrian link to Bullis Farm Road. City surveyor will review the CSM. With the Plan Commission approval of the site plan, it is also approving the 3-lot CSM, with Lot 2 having access, parking, and utility easements. City engineer approval of grading and drainage. And then they also need to establish a maintenance agreement for the stormwater facilities. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ryan? I have one. For Lot 3, which we don't have a site plan for, I'm assuming they would have to add additional parking.
Correct, depending on the parking need of that facility.
Okay, because that unit is supposed to be a larger number of units, right? So
That
it
is
would have
correct.
a greater parking requirement.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ryan? I don't see any, thank you. Is the applicant here?
Good evening. My name is Matt Lyons, 1233 North Mayfair Road, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm here to answer any questions. I don't have a prepared statement.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Mitchell?
Thank you. I see that you have 15 stalls available for visitors for 40 units. Do you think that's enough? Or
Excuse me.
I should
Yeah.
ask, what's your experience with parking?
Yeah, that's typical for what we do. It's approximately 1 stall for every 3 residents, which is consistent with nursing home requirements in many municipalities. And I believe the requirement here was 25% of the number of units, which equals 15 as well.
Go ahead.
Well, it wasn't so much what the standards required. That didn't seem like very many to me, based on my experience in visiting these kinds of places with relatives and friends and so forth. It seems like on a day that there might be more than 15 visitors, or do you not find that?
Yeah, with the 32 total stalls, we have similar facilities in other locations, and that seems to be sufficient. And there are, very rare instances where there's some overflow, but the 32 stalls generally seems to be sufficient for us.
Any other questions for the applicant? I don't see any, thank you.
Thanks.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll move recommendation.
And thank you.
And I'll second it with the conditions.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Third item on the agenda, for approval, a site plan for Hope Gospel Men's Center at 2650 Mercantile Drive.
Again, this is Hope Gospel that got approval of their rezoning and conditional use permit last year. The site is south of Dunkin' Donuts, across west of the new Festival Foods off of Claremont Avenue. Here's the proposed building with driveway. That is a private driveway as proposed. Here's the one-story elevation for the facility. and then the landscape plan that's in your packet. Hope Gospel Mission and Everyday Surveying and Engineering are requesting a site plan approval for the men's shelter. Attached in your packet is the site plan, building elevations, floor plan, and narrative for the project. The site plan shows a 23,740 square foot building. The narrative that's in your packet explains the increase in square footage for the building from the general development plan that was approved. This narrative explains the larger office facility, a larger lunchroom, and one additional bedroom with 2 beds. City code does allow for a 5% increase in the number of dwelling units within a project that does not need to go back to public hearing. Staff believes, and Mr. Dara Tufty believes, that the additional square footage of the project only increased it by 1 dwelling unit, which is consistent with the general development plan approved by City Council. The site plan shows a 57-stall parking lot for the building. Most of the residents at this facility typically do not have cars, so the required parking for the facility would be based on the number of employees and visitor parking need. The applicant states in their narrative as well that 15 or so staff members will be working at the facility on a given day. However, during a large meal or large meeting, the parking demand is increased significantly. Site access is from 3 24-foot wide curb cuts off a private drive on a public right-of-way, shown here. Sidewalks are shown from the front of the building and on the side, however, they need to be linked to the street. The landscape plan does note a mixture of foundation plantings and street trees. An 8-stall U-shaped bicycle rack is shown and provided. The site plan notes the removal of the existing non-conforming billboard, which is required by city code. The future additions that are noted on the site plan will need to be reviewed by the Plan Commission. Exterior lighting and dumpster enclosure are noted to meet city requirements. In your packet is the engineering report. If the Plan Commission does believe that this is consistent with the general development plan, there's a couple conditions that need to be met. The pedestrian link from the building to the street. With this approval, the existing non-conforming billboard will be removed prior to the issue of a building permit. And then also the city engineer approval of the grading and drainage. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ryan? Commissioner Peterson?
What happens if there's access needed north of here from the south access to Highway 12?
I think I would turn that over to the city engineer.
If I'm understanding your question, this is where the Hope Gospel Mission site is. You're asking what happens with this?
No, if there's access needed north of Hope Gospel,
Oh, coming up
since
this
it's a
way?
private driveway.
We don't know quite yet what's going to happen with this site up here. There's a little bench of a spot here that's really not developable with the setbacks for the right-of-way. So when this happens and they deal with where this drainageway comes through there, then we'll look at what this site is, what this road is, whether we really want that road to come through and have, you can see how close this intersection is. It's just off here, but that road's coming through. This intersection's really close and that intersection's really close. We'll want to look at the traffic patterns to know whether that road really should go through or not.
Okay, since they're putting a private drive on public right-of-way, can that be converted to a public street at a?
Yes, and in
if
fact,
needed?
on the next Plan Commission, or on the next City Council meeting, there's the development agreement for this project. The original development agreement, when this parcel was split off from this, talked about when this road would be built. Now we're going to amend that agreement to include this parcel, and it has the provisions in it that they will be signing a petition and waiver for the construction of this road when and if it happens.
That was
So
my
that's
concern.
all being discussed.
Thank you, John.
Are there any other questions for Ryan? Commissioner Grandland?
With the stipulation that they extend sidewalk, and then their construction of a private drive on the public right-of-way, where exactly do they quit making their sidewalk? Is it just when they cross the property line?
Ryan, if you don't mind, I'll answer that one. The way we've set up the development agreement, because of the right-of-way and the sidewalk requirements, there is a requirement for a sidewalk to be constructed along the right-of-way when the permanent road gets built. But the development agreement also has a stipulation that prior to that, as part of this site plan, they construct a pedestrian access from their main door to what would be the southeast corner of their site. And so that at least gets the pedestrians down to here. And then when the permanent road gets built, there'll be a permanent sidewalk along the whole street. Ryan wasn't involved in the discussions of the development agreement, so that's why I jumped in.
Thanks, Don.
Are there any other questions for staff? I don't see any at this point, thank you. Is the applicant here?
Yes, it would be. Dan Knowlton from the engineering firm, Everyday Surveying and Engineering. So I can answer questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any. Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion. Commissioner Peterson,
I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions in the letter.
do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, now on to things for discussion and direction. Town of Union Draft Comprehensive Plan Update.
The Town of Union is updating their comprehensive plan, which was prepared in 2007. This plan would cover the period from 2019 through 2038, so a 20-year time span versus most of our comp plans typically have been kind of a 10-year time frame. We've been asked to comment on this since we have extraterritorial review in a portion of the town of Union, and that's why we're bringing it to the Plan Commission. The update actually is being prepared by the Eau Claire County planning staff, which is good that they're involved in terms of rather than an outside consultant. In terms of the review of the comp plan, since Daryl was still around and this was one of his expertise, I commandeered him and asked him to review the comp plan and make comments regarding the consistency of that with our agreements. And what we looked at primarily were two things. One was the intergovernmental agreement chapter that we included in your packet, and then the land use chapter that was included in your packet. So we didn't look at the other chapters. These two related specifically to the agreement that we have regarding zoning and subdivision within the area. In terms of the land use chapter, the future land use map is the one that I have on the monitor here. And this map is consistent with the agreement that we had adopted with the Town of Union back in 2010. And then there was an addendum that was done back in 2012. In talking with the county staff, evidently there were a number of changes that were made back in 2007 that brought us up to that 2010 map. So they're comfortable with that map really without any changes. There's two minor changes that I'll identify here as I go through the map. The gray area off to the right here, this would be the city limits. And then this darker line or wider line right here is our sewer service boundary. And then this line here is our 3-mile plat review boundary right here. And then the yellow area here for the future land use map, this would be what's called the rural residential areas. Those are the areas that basically over the years have seen quite a bit of subdivision activity already within these areas, or could readily see some additional subdivision activity within those areas. This kind of gray area here is called the rural transition area. These areas are primarily existing farmland, existing cropland, some forestry land, with not too much subdivision activity that has occurred. But by the name transition, it means that over the course of the next 20, 25 years, we could see some subdivision activity occurring within that. And then the tan or the brown area here, this is what they refer to as the rural preservation or the rural lands. These are the lands that primarily we would see remain as agricultural, remain as farmland, remain as forestry land. So this is all consistent with what we saw back in 2010, 2012. This area up here, the kind of the purplish area, this is the industrial commercial area. The agreement then that we have with the town of Union essentially distinguishes in terms of whether the land is within the sewer service area, or whether it's outside the sewer service area but within the 3 mile area. So then we have certain standards or different standards for the lot size depending on whether it's within the sewer service area or outside. And the idea is within the sewer service area, the intent is that over time the city would be annexing out into those areas, since it is within our sewer service area, where we would not be annexing outside that boundary. But yet so outside that sewer service boundary, but within the 3 mile area, we still want to have plat review authority within that. And all the documents that are contained within the comprehensive plan that they're preparing include that. They include the agreement that we have adopted in 2010 and amended in 2014. And they do include this map, which is consistent with what we have right now. I'll just say that in terms of the addendum that I referred to, the addendum referred to the commercial area up here in terms of how the land would be divided, whether it's within the sewer service area or outside the sewer service area. That wasn't real clear in the original agreement. And then an additional condition was attached there that the city had the right to review site plans for any large big box type retail development that could occur in here. So that was added as part of that addendum. So we have drafted a letter that we are suggesting that the Plan Commission would sign, that we would send off to the town of Union, basically indicating that in our review of the comprehensive plan, their comprehensive plan draft, that it is consistent with the agreements that we have in place. I did find a couple errors in the comp plan that I talked with the county planner on the last couple days, and he's correcting those. I did mention that there's 2 changes to this map in comparison to 2010, 2012. They don't affect any of the residential land or any of the commercial land. They affect 2 parcels. One, this parcel here was listed as a public designation, and it actually is part of Sherman Creek Park. They're changing it to a park designation. And then this parcel right here was also designated as public institutional, and they're changing it to public, to park. And that actually is outside our 3 mile area anyway, so that doesn't have any bearing anyway. So with that, if you have any questions.
Are there any questions for Pat? Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. I think the letter's fine. The comments are fine. I had a question on page 47 or 150. I guess 150 would be on the hard copy, 47 on my screen.
What page again, Kathy?
150.
Okay.
It's under intergovernmental cooperation goal. It's the first under goals, policies, and objectives. Well, I could just read it. I don't know if you have the right do we have the same numbering?
Yeah.
Okay.
Page here?
On number 5 on there, participate in discussions on the potential expansion of wastewater or water to unincorporated areas. Does that not go violate the policies and principles of our comprehensive plan? That is the extension of sewer and water to property that is not annexed to the city? I mean, it doesn't say they want to do it, but they want to talk about it.
There are some provisions for residential cluster development that are within the plan, and it may have some direction on that.
Well, at any rate, I wouldn't necessarily put that into the letter, but it's maybe, I don't know.
Ryan might be able
The
to.
only thing I could think of there, we did it with the town of Washington when we wanted to loop some water lines. And I think what that agreement was, they could actually connect to that if they were still in the town of Washington. But the only time we did that was when we wanted to extend it for a large development. I think that's what it's trying to get at, but I don't think we'd be interested in that at this time.
Are there any other questions for Pat? Commissioner Peterson?
I agree with what we said in the letter, too. I do have some questions that I think I'll go right to the town union with in an email.
Okay.
Sometimes I refer to plan committee, sometimes it's plan commission. They should update the organization of WISDOT here in Eau Claire. They still refer to District 6. And then the other thing on page 75 or 178, they talk about coordinate land use planning and to address the city's plans for annexation. I didn't know that the city had plans for annexation. It seems that the property owners solicit the city.
This was on page 175?
75 or 178, under number 8. Maintain an understanding with the city of Eau Claire to coordinate land use planning and to address the city's plans for annexation, expansion, and service delivery. I don't think the city has plans for annexation per se.
No, we don't.
Okay, so maybe I'll just tell them to maybe change that a little bit too.
In talking with the planner from Eau Claire County, there were a couple pages within that land use plan that actually, after discussing with him today, he's taking out completely. And then I found a number of wording changes and things like that too. So the draft still is somewhat in flux. But in terms of our review from the Plan Commission, we feel that it's consistent with the agreements that we have.
Should I CC the county planner and Jenny or you on my comments
Yes,
to
if
the
you
town?
could, I can give you the county planner's email address, because actually he's the one, some of these changes that you're talking about here, he can probably make even without having to go through the town of Union.
Okay,
Although that one that you mentioned there, you'd have to go through the town, but in terms of some of the references to different agencies and things like that, the county can make those right away. So I can give you his email if you'd like.
okay,
And then if you wouldn't mind copying me or Jenny on that too, then.
okay, I'll do both of you.
Okay.
Very good. Any? Commissioner Mitchell?
Reflecting on what Mr. Peterson said, there does seem to be a general sense in this plan that the city can annex property without the property owners asking for it. And that's been a problem that I remember going back years and years. And again, I don't know if that's something that you can just mention to the planner. Do people really believe that the city can walk up and annex somebody's property? And if they do, that should be corrected.
Yeah, there was some in the intergovernmental cooperation element. There was kind of a mix of language in there. They talked about, it was on page, for the commission, it would be page 46 or 149. It was kind of a mix. They first talked about the kind of the conflicts between the city and the town related to the annexations that have occurred, and all the annexations have been opposed by the town, so they kind of started out on kind of a negative tone, but then in this section here, then the narrative starts talking about the agreements that have been adopted between the city and the town, and that has helped ease the tensions and things like that. So there's is some conflicting language there.
Commissioner Peterson.
As long as you have that page up there, I'm going to have them possibly change their first sentence. They said, since the 1960s, the city of Eau Claire has annexed significant amounts of land from the territory of the town of Union. Maybe it's significant amounts of territory have been annexed by the city. It isn't that the city has annexed them. It's, the property owners have asked for annexation and they've gone into the city. So it's kind of looking like the city has gone after those properties.
Yeah, and that would be fine. I guess when Daryl and I reviewed this, we didn't get into that type of suggested wording, but you're right in terms of just the tone of it could be changed a little bit.
I know what Commissioner Mitchell has said has been, I think it's probably the understanding of 75–80% of the people in the area that the city annexes land, that they go out and ask for annexations where it's really the property owners.
Probably a higher percentage than that even.
Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Mitchell.
And if I could make a suggestion, I really think that Mr. Peterson should send his comments to you and you send them to the county. We all trust Mr. Peterson, but there could be a rogue plan commission member like Mr. Grenland who would insist that certain changes be made in the Town of Union plan and probably should go through you, and then you could decide what to do.
Yeah, that would be best. I
Yeah.
agree.
Anybody else? I think we've worn this one out.
So we would need a motion from the commission
Okay.
to authorize you to sign that letter then.
So we'd be looking for such a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, conditional use permits, Class 2 notice. It's going to take longer.
Yes. This is more of an update for you. We had in November last year, state law change with the conditional use permits. So there's two changes to be aware of. One, it elongates the review period. So instead of 15 days, it's now 20 days. So it requires a Class 2 notice or twice in the paper. So fees are set at $500 right now, but we'll look at next year if we want to raise fees or not to cover 2 postings in the newspaper. So that is, right, here's the state statute. This is the language right out of it. I just highlighted it for you. So Class 2 notice. And we don't have to change our city zoning code on this because we refer right back to the state statute, so we're good there.
Okay.
And then this law change really comes from the situation in Trempealeau County. It was a case where a sand mine and I want to say the county of Trempealeau, there was a proposed sand mine, and the county board had 37 conditions that they had figured out, so it was a long meeting, to attach to the approval. And then with public comment, at the end, they chose to actually deny it. So they had a set of conditions that the proposer had met, would meet. And it was all pretty much agreed to, but then they changed their mind. So the energy company, the sand mine, sued the county board, and so then we got this change in the state law. Just to clarify, this word called substantial evidence. So in the state law now, basically it's saying that we need to have facts, not just personal fears or speculation. So it says that means facts and information other than merely personal preferences or speculation directly pertaining to the requirements, conditions an applicant must meet to obtain a conditional use permit that is reasonable, persons would accept in support of a conclusion. So it's kind of a lot of verbiage there, but just asking for substantial evidence. And so this gets back to here, part B, where right here, the applicant must demonstrate that the application, all the requirements and the conditions established by the city relating to the conditional use permit shall be satisfied, both of which supported by substantial evidence. So the applicant must meet substantial evidence, so present, if it's a sand mine or something like that, how air quality is going to be dealt with, noise and things. Also on the city's end, that if there's some gray area, we want to as staff be able to empower the plan commission to be able to rest on substantial evidence in that you're making a solid decision, whether it's related back to compatibility or some other objective standards, noise. So those are the two changes right there. In review of our city code, like I said, class 2, we refer back to the state statute, so we're good there. And then just to show the code we have in the conditional use permit section, it's okay to have general provisions, that's fine. So that's kind of that set of criteria related back to like public safety, welfare, compatibility, kind of that generalization that really pertains back to the given situation when you judge it in context. And then also we break down individual uses, which is really important in terms of helping you to make a solid decision. So we have specific standards, provisions for you to help decide, this is substantial evidence to either approve or deny a conditional use permit. So we're solid with our city code. We don't need to amend that at all, but we just wanted to bring this to your attention, let you know that the review process is going to take a little bit longer, and that when we make decisions, and we have in the past, we've always made sound decisions, but just to reiterate that we need to always have substantial evidence.
Okay. Do you need any action from us on this? Okay. Next item on the agenda is code compliance items. Does anyone have anything? Can I bring up a traffic issue? Okay. So I live on Mount Simon, and I've lived up there since 1986. And in either 1986 or 1987, there used to be quite a bit of substantial semi-traffic that came down Birch Street, went down Dewey, went along Sheridan, and then went down to the paper mill. And there was a 6-year-old boy who was waiting for the school bus and was run over and killed on the corner of Dewey and Birch. And the city then did not allow semis to run that route. But now I think because a lot of truck drivers are using GPS, I bet you I run into a semi once a day. And those narrow little streets, and they twist and turn, are very challenging to try and fit semi and cars in the same place, not to mention that sharp needle turn that goes down into the paper mill. So I'm just raising it as a concern because there was a child that was killed, and for years there was a sign there that said no semi-traffic this way.
And I think there's a weight limit on that bridge, too.
There is.
Should
There
preclude
is,
that.
but it kind of kept going up. When the city was first talking about replacing it, before you discovered that it was actually owned by the railroad, there was, for a little while, I think it was a 5 or 10 ton limit, and now I think it says 25, but I will tell you that there are a ton of vehicles that are ignoring that. So just something I've noticed. And I blame GPS. I don't blame the truck drivers. GPS says, oh, this way is faster, but they don't really realize what they're getting into.
Yeah, we have that in several locations over on Redwood off of Western. They come up through that residential area too because of the GPS. And
Okay.
we'll see what we can do.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. That was just something I noted. Anybody else have anything that's code compliance? Any future agenda items? Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, yes.
Wanted to mention that the city has hired a new community
Oh,
development
yes, you were going to
director.
talk about that.
Yeah. His name is Scott Allen.
Okay,
He'll be starting on April 16th. He comes from a city in Missouri called Blue Springs, Missouri.
he was a planner down there?
Pardon me?
He was a planner down there?
It was the director of community development down there. It's a
Okay.
city of about 55,000, kind of in the Kansas City area. He's originally from Wausau.
Oh, okay.
Worked over in the Twin Cities for a few years at a couple of the counties in the southern suburbs of the Twin Cities. Then worked in Marshfield for a couple of years. And then moved to Blue Springs, where he was senior planner for a couple of years. And then in 2006, he became the director of community development. They have a department about the same size as Eau Claire. So he has quite a bit of experience in comprehensive planning, site plan review, some downtown planning. So I think it'd be a real good fit for our department.
Very good. So he will probably be assuming that chair then, when he gets kind of, well, I mean, when he gets comfortable.
That'll be up to him as the director, how he wants to
Okay.
direct his staff, but
Okay.
probably.
Do you think he'll be at the meeting? Do we have a meeting on the 16th of
We do have a
April?
meeting on the 16th.
Okay, so we'll get a chance to meet him?
I think so, yes.
Okay, very good. Anything else? Seeing nothing, I call for adjournment.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.